Hey there, John the Raven here for John's Sword Discovery. I'm going to take a nice little peek right now. I have an interesting piece, or really it's a variation of a series of style of short sword that was very popular in the late medieval and early Renaissance period, especially among Germanic countries and especially among, let's say, basically the Swiss. Although variations of this were adopted within other cultural regions, it is essentially a development of the type of dagger, also in short version that existed earlier, known as the Baselard. And here we have a late version of Baselard, also sometimes referred to as a degen. It's a very nice little reproduction here, long out of production, only made for a short time many years ago. And here we are, removed from the scabbard. We have a nice blade, give or take 22 inches, maybe just under 2 feet. Nice triple fullering through the lower half of the fort, actually for a brief distance, maybe about 2.5 inches. There's actually 5 short fullers on the ricasso. This version features a nice little ricasso. Then you have this blade that's largely non-tapering, almost parallel, you might say, and it gradually works into a flattened diamond section, cross section for the mid to upper half of the blade up to the point. A moderate point, not super obtuse, not super acute or pointy, but more moderate or intermediate, so it's somewhat pointy. More than enough to effectively thrust through softer targets or up to, I would say, medium targets. Padded armor, gambesons, some mail. It would still very much have been used in the 15th century and into the 16th century by certain troops, certainly various militia and infantry forces that were equipped sometimes often by their own means or by conscript means, which is often the case within many of the Swiss units, as well as some of the other Germanic units that would have proliferated throughout this period, and just various other individuals' private purchases. However, they may have been defensively equipped. The point would have effectively thrusted through softer to medium targets. Not something you're going to use against plate armor, but for lesser targets, the thrusting ability is good. And then, of course, when we get into the cut, it has a nice parallel blade with a good cross section, good edge geometry for cutting in, again, to basically the same kind of soft to medium targets, anything from no armor or the clothes on your back up to things like soft textile armor of various kinds, gambesons and things like that. So as a sidearm, which of course this would have been, this and variations of it were very popular during that period, some with different blade profiles, some with stronger profile taper, largely to better effect thrusting, some like this, some with slightly different point section, but otherwise similar blade shape and profile. And the cross-sectional geometries varied quite a bit on these. This nice sort of almost lozenge-shaped guard, subtle but very effective to use on an ungauntleted or even a hand with some sort of a gauntlet, which some would have used during that time, depending on the type of troop. Certainly a full plate gaunts were used in partial armor by some of the pikemen, which one of the main type of troops that are often associated with this particular kind of sidearm, pikemen in Swiss forces and other Germanic forces, if we're talking about proper military forces and not just a personal civilian sidearm, which these were also known to be used by various individuals as personal civilian sidearms as well. With his nice sort of grip, you can see with the indentations and indentations provide a nice grip, bare wood, and with a nice sort of a, you might consider it a bolster type pommel. That construction and shape was commonly found on late medieval and early Renaissance swords and daggers of various kinds, as opposed to the more traditional sword pommel, which was, of course, very, radically in shape and design and mass, and then, basically had greater mass sort of set off toward the end of the hilt, where this is basically, we could also simply call it a form of a butt cap, which effectively it is. This was common on many swords. Daggers appeared, of course, as I mentioned before, more traditional pommels continued very well, of course. It goes without saying throughout this period and later on various other types of hilt weapons, but this style became more and more common on certain types from the late medieval period onwards. It became more common, and you saw some earlier than that, but they become more common on this type of sword as well as others during this period and later to a larger extent. Simple but nice scabbard, historically inspired, not strictly accurate in its design instruction, but looks decent and works good. No wood core, so it's technically a sheath. These nice little bodkins are known on a few surviving examples. One, a nice little bodkin for skewering and enjoying and eating meat, practical tool, sort of a domestic utensil for campaigning soldiers, as well as a knife primarily for cutting meat, but maybe for other utilitarian purposes also. But again, not primary weapon for utilitarian needs for a campaigning soldier. In that regard, it completes a nice package, I think. This is an older museum replica, a windlass piece, long discontinued, made for a short time and in relatively small numbers, hard to find now. Well weighted, well balanced, slightly forward balanced, but actually not too much for this style sword, which has a very light amount of distal taper going up the blade, but not a great amount. And probably for sort of this length and size, you would not want a lot of distal taper. In other words, you wouldn't want it thinning too much for the point, given its overall length and the manner in which it would be used. But overall, it's the distal taper in relation to its overall balance and weight and heft turns out quite well. Extremely smooth and easy to use. Especially in close quarters, which is how these would have been most commonly employed as a secondary sidearm to fight with, as well as a defensive, necessary defensive backup weapon. So that's all for now. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you next time. John the Raven for John's Sword Discovery. Happy New Year now, as is January 1st, 2026. Enjoyed it. See you soon.